Morning, all. All right. This is awesome. Denver, what do you think? Yeah? Little energy? Little energy? We were talking about this a little earlier this morning. The number of different OpenShift Commons days that we've done, which is now morphed into our community day. I don't know that we had an exact number, but the size of the room was always a little smaller. And here we are. I don't know the full room capacity, but somewhere pushing towards 1,000 people. And it's just awesome to have this whole group here kind of embracing, celebrating, and talking about what we do together collaboratively as communities. So I think, do we have a way to click our... Yeah, there we go. So I think what we want to do is give you a little sense of, I'll say, what community means at Red Hat, a little bit of areas that we're involved with, and kind of how we see community work impacting really the future of technology. So I'll start off with this, this notion of, this is a little awkward for me and even for our Red Hat brand style to be less humble, but we're often used as this benchmark of other companies saying, we like to be the Red Hat of fill in the blank. And well, we're here to claim that we are the Red Hat of the things that we do. And what does that mean? I wanted to unpack that a little bit. What does that mean? First and foremost, everything that we do starts as a community effort. We do all of our work in the open source upstream communities. We start there. We have a long history of learning where that can be, why that's important. So we've done things in our past that include making downstream changes that were inconsistent with upstream, and paid the price of that technical debt. But we have this really keen focus on working together with open source upstream communities, to the point that when we do acquisitions at Red Hat, one of the things we do is open source the technology that comes along with that acquisition. One of the things that struck me, and Ashesh and I were talking about this recently, we have an internal mailing list, and the internal mailing list covers a lot of different types of topics. It's just a pretty broad mailing list. And one day, not that long ago, somebody pointed out on that mailing list, hey, check this out. Red Hat is the #1 contributor to CNCF projects. And there was a point in time where that was a celebrated type of statistic. It's sort of a vanity metric of how much are you involved in open source communities. We would pay attention to those. We'd put them in our slide decks and when we're talking to customers and showing that as a really important aspect of who we are. The honest truth is we basically stopped watching. We weren't using this as a metric. And to just show up that way, I think it says a lot. It's a very genuine view of how we participate in open source communities. So there are no OKRs for engineers to have a certain number of commits or pull requests or activity in a community. And lo and behold, it just shows how we engage with communities as part of the process of how we build and deliver our products.
I'll add to that, Chris. To say from a product perspective, we're super supportive of the work that our engineering teams do and the work that goes on upstream and in open source. So there's nothing that we're doing on the product side to say, well, reduce contribution, reduce focus, stop experimentation, or increase it to do anything to the statistics, right? So that's just a very natural part of the way we work and the way we flow from development all the way down into.
Yeah, even to the point of, from a product point of view, we're not trying to have something special in our products that's different from the technology that's in the open source community, except for the fact that we've assembled it and delivered it, and we'll stand behind it and lifecycle manage it, and security patch update it, and all those things.
Chris, the final point maybe to make on this slide is, and we'll get into some more, there is some confusion around open source in general.
Yeah.
Right? And so maybe there's not a vanity metric to be had on contributions, but there seems to be a fair bit of chatter in communities around, what's open, what's not, how is that definition changed? companies have made changes in licenses, right, due to commercial pressures they're running into.
Yep.
Our stance remains unchanged on that. So I don't know, from your perspective, Chris, if you have thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think we put it on the slide here at the top. We are unwavering in our commitment to open source communities. Nothing from what we're doing is changing. While the world around us is changing all the time. You see these companies trying to sort out what their business model looks like and shifting licenses, changing from an open model to an open core model. And we're not trying to say those things are fundamentally bad or broken or anything like that, but we're just different. Right. And this is a step into how we think about that from project to product workflow that is fundamental to how we build and deliver products.
There's a natural process, right, that goes on from project to product, right? To get from project to product can take, years, if you will, for that to see light of day. And, we like to make sure that, we're helping to support experimentation, right? So Chris is CTO, he is ops CTO, Erin Boyd is here, her team does a bunch of work in new areas. And from our perspective on the product side, we're hugely supportive because unless you allow for a period of experimentation, allow for some adoption to happen, it doesn't really find its way all the way down into product. So sometimes you run into challenges, and many of you in the room might have seen this, and maybe we need to do a better job of being more explicit, but we want to make sure that customers are, or users are, trying out features in open source communities. And then the ones that we find are either the most valuable, the most robust, the ones that we think need to have lifecycle around them, we them in product. The challenge you will sometimes run into is there'll be a period of experimentation. Some will make it all the way through, and some won't. And we don't think of that as a failure, right? That's just a natural part of the process. So the more feedback we can get from you, the quicker we can get, the more engagement we can get from all of you in the room around that, the better it is with regard to us thinking through how far we need to carry it.
We're here, Community Day, and Community Day is bringing together the collection of communities that you heard about just at the opening. The formatting of our slide didn't come out exactly as we anticipated, but on the left-hand side-ish, we're describing Linux, Kubernetes, and Ansible. These are the communities that are well represented here in Community Day, and also those are really the core technologies that we're most deeply invested in from a Red Hat point of view, as we think about the platforms that we build and deliver. If you look at those, there's these nice adjacent spaces that are examples of what Ashesh was talking about in terms of where we're carrying that work forward. So efforts that started at Red Hat along with some other members in the community to develop SigStore so that we could build clear provenance from software developed in an open source community, carry it through to a consumer of that software so that you have the ability to sign and then verify that essentially that you're getting what you thought you were getting from a project, from a community project. Something like KubeVirt, which is this really interesting project. It is recently celebrating a birthday, and I can't remember, I think it's 8 years old. The KVM project that sort of underlies KubeVirt is substantially
Chris,
older.
should we poll the audience to see how many KubeVirt users?
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah.
How many KubeVirt users? Oh, that's a good number. We need a lot more. We need a lot. Anyone read the news around Broadcom and VMware?
Well, hey, just saying. That's building on building technology at the integration with Kubernetes. That's leveraging this really robust, important technology that we built, between QEMU and the Linux kernel, lower down in the stack. But that's an 8-year journey building on top of something that itself is probably now, I'd say, 15 plus years old. Creating this environment where you can run virtual machines on the same platform that you can run containers, so you can sort of bring the whole world into the future, which I think is really exciting.
So Chris, this is Community Day, so people maybe expect us to be a little looser, a little bit more controversial.
All right,
right?
Let's do it.
So now the question is, how far do we toe over the line? Okay, so here's another poll. How many of you expect us to talk about HashiCorp? Show of hands. Oh, thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, we're not going to talk about HashiCorp. We aren't allowed to talk about HashiCorp. But we're excited, and we'll continue, work with the team as we have to date. So our public statements end right there. Back to you, Chris.
Well, another example is something that we started at Red Hat that was, it's actually a series of things that were an offshoot from this really important technology we all know and love, containers. In the earliest phase of containers and Docker were synonymous. It meant the same thing. We carried a slightly different mantra internally at Red Hat, which was that Linux is containers, or Linux are containers are Linux, meaning it's a very operating system, low-level technology that's exposed directly from the operating system. We wanted to create something that fit better what we thought fit better the security needs and the operational needs of our customer base. So we introduced a collection of technologies around Podman. And ultimately, those grew into something called Podman Desktop. And this is another example of, this is, for us, it's 100% community activity. We're really doing this to enable a workflow so that you can sit on your desktop, build containers, and deploy to a Kubernetes cluster of your choice. And this is one of those projects that for us wasn't really, it's not something that we were trying to make it be a prominent part of a product portfolio. It's just something that was a technology experiment. And it grew a community of its own. And it's a very thriving, robust community, delivering containers on all sorts of different platforms, Windows, Mac OS, obviously building and deploying onto a Kubernetes cluster somewhere. But these are things that we think are awesome, because this is how we engage with building the next generation of technology, which we believe will be open source, continue to be open source, despite the confusion around exactly what open source is. And that might bring us to the last topic that we wanted to cover.
I'll just put a fine point on this slide, and then we'll move on to the next, which is we go aggressively from project to product when we believe is the right direction, right? So we made a significant shift in OpenShift. For those who've been following OpenShift for a while, went from version V2 to V3 with Kubernetes. We embraced fully KubeVirt directly into our products via OpenShift virtualization, right? Both decisions were controversial at the time, if you've been following us for a while, right? We took a lot of stick internally as well as externally around it. SigStore now is getting productized via our Red Hat Trusted Application Pipeline, and that's now hit GA. You'll see more that we've been doing on the Podman front, Podman Desktop, as well as into AI. So when we believe a direction's the right one, right, then we'll lean in really hard into it. So you'll see us, making some bets like that, and then when we do, we expect to stay with it for a period of time. Which talks about the next bet we want to make. Can't go to a technology event anymore without being able to talk about AI. So tomorrow and day after, both Chris and I will spend some time talking about our AI bet. In fact, you'll hear from many of us from Red Hat around what we want to do here. We want to start with this notion of what is open source, what is community, because we feel like that's something that one is, I don't know if absence is the right word, right? But maybe isn't as prevalent in AI today as we'd like to see it. And two, since we are the Red Hat of Red Hat, we also want to be the Red Hat of AI. And so we want to lean into how do we bring open source principles, the way we work in communities and open source for 20 plus years to AI.
We've seen a number of different machine learning models, mostly generative AI, so LLMs, brought to the forefront, described as open source. And I've been in conversations sometimes with analysts where I'll use the term open connected with these models and get corrected, because it's a vast choice of completely closed and proprietary models to sort of, I don't know how to say it other than unique, specially defined criteria around what open means in terms of accessibility to the model, but not really all of it. Yeah, open-ish. And from my point of view, that kind of discussion around open source and AI is continuing to pick up, which I think is awesome. It's growing across the industry. And what we're trying to do is enable that. So our view here is we want to build community collaboration to democratize the access to models, to contributions to models, to improve, take our collective experience and shift that experience into LLMs and something that can be useful broadly across the community. And then, of course, specialize and fine tune for any specific kind of a customer use case. I think this is huge. I think we're standing at the beginning. So every technology conversation ends up having AI in it, as Ashesh pointed out. Now we're standing at the beginning of every AI conversation has this discussion around, well, what does open mean in this context? I think we're really excited to be building a tool set that we launched, a week and a half ago, called Instruct Lab, which gives you the ability to add skills and knowledge to a machine learning model in an open, collaborative way. So we build a tool set that's itself open. We build a process for contributing skills and knowledge to machine learning models that is also open. So the data, the YAML files that are used to do that training are accessible to the community. And think about that iterative process that historically, to date, has been done largely behind closed doors. It's either very large companies or small, targeted startups that are trying to build their model. I think it's time for us to shift that conversation to how do we build our model. It's pretty awesome. To me, it's a really exciting time.
Well, and then just to make a clear point of this, right? We're not here to necessarily force you into one choice, right? You'll make your choices. We're not here to say, this is about us being more open than somebody else. We have a definite point of view, right? We believe that point of view is a valuable one. It's an interesting one, right? It's one that'll empower users and communities around the world. So Instruct Lab is available today. If you're interested in checking it out, right, there's a lounge to go to. I don't know exactly when it's open, but I would highly encourage you to go there. It'll definitely be open tomorrow onwards. You can go to Hugging Face right now and access it on GitHub as well. So, check it out, play with it, and give us feedback.
That is the community process. Get involved, roll up your sleeves, scratch your own itch. And I think we're at this point where we can really shift that conversation and change the, I'll say, balance of power from concentrated in a few owners of large data sets to a more broader community accessible way of extending and building, and ultimately then being able to trust. I think it was Sherrard having conversations with his kid about flying cars, be able to trust the AI models that are driving those flying cars, because we'll be building those things together and building transparency into that whole process.
Yeah. So that's all the time we have today. Thank you again. Thank you all for coming together like the way you have. It's amazing to see. I think both Chris and I are very gratified by that. Keep that community collaboration going, and then next few days, as you see the announcements come through on the AI front, right? Give us your honest feedback, and with that, we'll try to do better.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thank you.